Hello everyone, and welcome to the next edition of the Holland Land Office Museum's Artifact video series. My name is Ryan Duffy, and I'm the director of the museum. And this week we're going to talk about something unique in Batavia's history, but something we don't have any artifacts left to show, so we'll have to use pictures from the past in order to tell the story. Now this week we're going to talk about something dealing with the transportation history of Batavia, and that is the Batavia Trolley line that ran the length of Main Street in the first few decades of the 20th century. Now, trolley lines became very popular towards the end of the 19th century and into the early 20th century with the larger application of electricity. And every major city had their own trolley lines, maybe the most famous being San Francisco. But with electric lines and electric rails, trolley cars became a big hit in the transportation boom of the early 20th century. And Batavia was part of that, and its line was meant to be a part of a bigger line connecting Rochester and Buffalo, though it seems that it really only existed here in Batavia in terms of the overall plan. Now, the trolley line was moderately successful, but that success did not last very long, and it changed owners and operators rather frequently, and in the end disappeared almost as soon as it came. And within 3 or 4 decades of its extinction as an operating transportation system, all remnants of it were either paved over or torn out completely. So there really is no remnant of it left on Main Street in Batavia. But we're going to go through the history of the Batavia trolley line and talk about its beginnings and its ends, and show you some pictures of both the trolley and what Main Street looked like when the trolley lines were in place. The trolley line in Batavia was completed in 1903, though it was originally just a small piece of a much larger line. The Buffalo and Williamsville Company, who built the line, had plans for a line running from Williamsville and Depew to Rochester. They even had talks with investors of further expansion to Medina or Horseshoe Lake, and eventually across New York State. However, the Batavia Main Street line is all that would come to pass. The trolley was a single track that ran 1.5 miles from Clinton Street to the intersection of West Main Street and Lewiston Road. A turnout was also built near Bank Street to allow the trolley cars to pass each other. It officially opened on September 2, 1903, with many of the village aldermen as its first riders. It quickly became the latest marvel in Batavia, and people flocked to ride the trolley, with reports of over 3,000 people to board at some point during the first week. The local patrons of the trolley line would soon have issues with its builder. Though the line had a large number of riders, very little was done to make improvement in terms of equipment or the quality of the ride. In 1911, there were several complaints from East Main Street residents of the noise of the trolley cars, and many riders were less than thrilled with the uncomfortable seats on board. By this point, no effort had been made to add a second line. When some expansion began in 1912, the village alderman asked the company to pave Main Street, which was never resurfaced after the line was finished. It was believed by the village officials that this was the company's responsibility and not the village's. A disagreement over the paving of Main Street became increasingly hostile. When pressured, the company hinted that they would just close the line altogether. They would then attempt to make good on their threat by applying for a permit to close the trolley line. In response, a commission of local men, including George Wyard and K.B. Mathis, two prominent local businessmen, sought out other entities in order to run it. In 1914, they found a potential buyer in the Storage Battery Company of New York City, but it was deemed too soon after that it would be more beneficial if the line was owned and operated by local companies. A year later, the Batavia Traction Company was created to undertake such a venture. Though the trolley still ran for another 12 years, there were never the funds to make the needed improvements that were necessary, as in the early complaints against the Buffalo and Williamsville Company. Trolleys were becoming a thing of the past, being replaced by buses, and there was little outside interest to keep the cable cars going. By the end of the year, the trolley line on Main Street ceased to take Batavians to and fro. Some of the tracks were dug up during scrap drives in 1943, during World War II. Another part was covered by blacktop in 1947, while the tracks along East Main Street were still there until the entirety of Main Street was rebuilt in the 1960s. You enjoyed this edition of our Artifact video series, and I hope that you stick with us through the ones in the future. In case you missed any in the past, you can go to our YouTube channel, Holland Land Office Museum, and check out the Artifact video series playlist, and you can check out the multitude of videos we've already done. And if you enjoy them, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel, as it helps the channel out a little bit, but also gets you notified even sooner when we do post videos. But as always, the best way to come and check out the artifacts here and the stories behind them is to visit the museum, and we'll be happy to share even more stories behind the videos here, as it's quite interesting, the wealth of information that we can really offer, and what interesting stories we can share from the local history of Genesee County.